Imagine you're a food scientist. The year is 1983. Your new boss is the Clorox Company. Yes, the bleach guys. They hand you a humble packet of herbs and spices. This is America's next favorite food, they say. Your mission: turn this into a bottled dressing that can sit on a warm grocery shelf for one full year. There's just one problem. The original recipe is based on a fresh mixture of buttermilk and mayonnaise. A dairy-based dressing that spoils quickly, so you can't use it. What do? You don't start with dairy. You start with soybean oil, water, and a little bit of chemical magic. Our story begins not in a boardroom, but on a ranch, Hidden Valley Ranch in Santa Barbara, California. The year was 1954, and the owner was a man named Steve Henson. He wasn't a food scientist, he was a cowboy, and he had a recipe. A creamy, tangy dressing he perfected in Alaska, made with real buttermilk, mayonnaise, and a secret blend of herbs. It was so good, guests on his ranch started asking to take jars home. Henson, seeing an opportunity, started a small mail order business. But he didn't sell the dressing. He sold a packet of the dry ingredients, the secret recipe. Customers would mix it at home with their own fresh buttermilk and mayo. The business became a sensation. Soon, Henson was shipping thousands of packets a month from a small facility. His humble recipe was a runaway success. But that kind of success doesn't stay secret for long. It attracts attention, the kind of attention that comes from a boardroom. In 1972, the corporate world didn't just knock, it kicked the door down. The Clorox Company made an offer for $8 million, and Steve Henson sold his creation. He thought he was securing the legacy of his beloved recipe, but what he had really done was to hand the keys to the kingdom over to the scientists, and their first order of business was to break the formula. So, why change a winning formula? Why not just keep selling the packets? Because the executives at Clorox understood the future. It was the 1970s. The era of the TV dinner was in full swing. Convenience wasn't just a feature. It was becoming the most valuable commodity in America. And a packet that you still have to mix yourself? That's an extra step. It's friction. But a pre-made bottle you can just open and pour, that was the future. A future that was also incredibly profitable. A humble packet of herbs has a small profit margin. But a bottle filled with cheap oil and water, sold at a premium? Now that is a gold mine. And a bottle takes up more shelf space, a claim to territory in the coming dressing wars. So the scientists at Clorox were given their real mission. Take the idea of a fresh, dairy-based recipe and re-engineer it for maximum convenience and profit. They knew immediately the original formula was useless. Fresh buttermilk spoils. Mayonnaise separates. So they didn't try to replicate the recipe, they decided to replicate the sensation. They started with the cheapest possible base: soybean oil and water. Two ingredients that famously refuse to mix. So they added a binder, a powdered gum called xanthan. It's a powerful emulsifier that forces the oil and water to stay together and gives the watery mixture a thick, creamy texture. That mimics the feel of real dairy. Next, they had to fake the flavor. Real ranch gets its savory depth from buttermilk and herbs, but in a base of oil and water, that flavor was gone. So they reached for a cheat code: monosodium glutamate, MSG, a flavor enhancer that creates an intense, craveable, savory sensation. It's a shortcut to flavor. Finally, to make it last forever on the shelf, they added preservatives, chemicals like sorbic acid and calcium disodium eta. These inhibit the growth of mold and bacteria. The transformation was complete. The fresh 5-ingredient system from the ranch was gone. In its place was a new formula, an engineering marvel made of oil, water, gums, and flavor enhancers. And for the consumer, It delivered on two powerful promises: perfect consistency every single time, and a shelf life that meant you could buy a bottle and forget about it for a year. It was convenient, it was reliable, and for the corporation, it was incredibly profitable. But it was all built on a central lie. They were selling you an industrial formula, but marketing it as if it was still the cowboy's original fresh dairy recipe. The lie is hiding in plain sight, right there on the front of the bottle. Often, it's a picture of creamy, fresh buttermilk. It's meant to make you think of a real dairy dressing, the kind Steve Henson used to make on his ranch. But the real story is on the back, on the ingredient list, and that list has one simple, unbreakable rule. Ingredients are always listed by weight, from the largest amount down to the smallest. The ingredient at the very top of the list, that's what the company used the most of, so you look at the label, and you see it, a number 3, buttermilk. But this isn't the fresh liquid buttermilk from the farm you're picturing. On an industrial scale, it's almost always a powder. See, you might think, it's a buttermilk dressing after all. But that's what they want you to think. Because what are the two ingredients listed before it? The two ingredients that make up the vast majority of this bottle? Number 1, vegetable oil. Number 2, water. This is not a dairy-based dressing. It is an oil and water emulsion, with buttermilk added to it. The thick, creamy texture doesn't come from the dairy, it comes from xanthan gum. And a huge part of the savory, craveable flavor comes from monosodium glutamate, MSG. It's the ultimate illusion. They use just enough real buttermilk to legally and morally justify the picture on the front, while the product itself is built on a cheaper, more stable industrial foundation. That is the real dairy illusion, and it allows them to sell you this bottle of cheap ingredients at a shockingly high price. So, what is the true cost of this bottle of oil and water? Let's look at the hidden price tag. For a $4 bottle of ranch, the ingredients inside, the oil, the water, the sugar, the pinch of buttermilk powder, cost the company about 45 cents. The plastic bottle it comes in? That costs about 60 cents. Let that sink in. You pay more for the disposable plastic container than you do for the food. Manufacturing adds another 30 cents. Shipping it across the country is about 45 cents more. But the biggest slice of the pie? Marketing. The TV commercials, the ads, the budget to keep the Hidden Valley dream alive. That's about 90 cents per bottle. And the last piece? The grocery store's profit. They take about $1.30. So when you pay $4 at the checkout, you're paying 45 cents for food and $3.55 for everything else. It's a business model built not on quality ingredients, but on a brilliant marketing machine. A machine designed to sell you a fantasy. A fantasy of a sun-drenched, happy valley, of a rustic red barn and fresh greens from a garden. The fantasy that what's in the bottle is what's on the label. But there is a way to reject that false fantasy and reclaim the original recipe they broke. So, how do you beat them? How do you escape the system? You make the real thing. And it takes about 5 minutes. Here's the takedown. Write this down. Half a cup of real mayonnaise, half a cup of sour cream, half a cup of real buttermilk, a spoonful of fresh dill and chives, a pinch of onion and garlic powder, a little salt and pepper, you stir, that's it. The total cost, about $3. Now, you might be thinking, that's similar to a bottle, and with the bottle, I'm paying for the convenience and the long shelf life. And that's a fair point. But the real question is, what is the hidden cost of that convenience? What are you giving up to get it? You're giving up real food. You're giving up the bright tang of real buttermilk, the fresh green bite of dill and chives. a complex flavor with layers you can actually taste. You're giving all of that up for one predictable flavor note. A taste engineered to be perfectly consistent and nothing more. The simple recipe you just made, that is the true legacy of the cowboy from Hidden Valley. It's not a formula from a lab, it's real food from your kitchen. The original is back, and now it's yours. So the next time you see that bottle on the shelf, you'll know the story. You'll know it's not a cowboy's recipe, it's a corporate formula. Brought to you by the experts in shelf stability.